Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ocean Rockstars podcast. Today, I have a lovely guest, Audra. Audra has a lot of experience in the fields of addiction and mental health. She has a KDAC 3, which is, I believe, the highest level of KDAC.
Yes.
That's a certified addiction counselor, but the 3 stands for the amount of time and experience and training that you've had. You've worked with several different facilities, you work with clients, you have a very interesting story yourself, and really there's a lot of information we can learn today about family, about kids, losing kids, how to get them back, dealing with the system. So there's just really a lot of interesting information that you can share with us today.
Yes.
And we can learn from you, and you can help people out there dealing with some of the issues that you have dealt with yourself, and also what you're helping clients and families deal with. So without any further ado, welcome on the show.
Thank you so much for having
me. You're just so lovely to have you on the show. And I wanted to start with just learning a little bit about your background.
Yes.
How did you get into this field?
So, I struggled with addiction very young.
Mm-hmm.
I started experimenting with drugs when I was 10.
Oh, wow.
Running away, just really bad. I was a teen mother. I had my first daughter at the age of 16. By the time I was 19, I had 2 daughters.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have an education. I didn't have any self-worth, so I didn't have anything to keep me from going back to, using and numbing, and I didn't have any tools, and I hadn't had any treatment. So I struggled a lot with, substance use throughout my entire teens and throughout my 20s. And during my addiction, I lost all 4 of my daughters to DCFS, came and took all 4 of my daughters. And, at the time, I didn't have the confidence.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have the moral support. I didn't have the self-love. I didn't have the backbone even, or the energy to begin to even try and put together a plan to get them back. So I just numbed myself and went even deeper into addiction, into depression, and into just like self-harm and just crazy erratic behavior. Losing your children, it's really scary.
Right.
And up until recently, this was in 2011, so the stigma was being broken up a little bit, but it was strong then.
Mm-hmm.
And DCFS would come in, and if they didn't like you, they could really abuse their power. And instead of offering support and, hope or resources, because the whole point of DCFS is family reunification.
Right.
But if they don't like you, and then they build a file and they talk to people, and of course, it's really heartbreaking to hear a child, talk about the things that they've witnessed. So a lot of the times I feel like parents that lose their children that are struggling with addiction or mental health get pushed to the wayside.
Right.
And they just get forgotten about.
Right.
And so, those 6 months of check-ins where you're supposed to be showing things that you're doing, like parenting classes, treatment and all of that, a lot of times parents just don't go. For me,
because they're dealing with the addiction.
Oh, right? Yeah. And they're just there's nobody to say, hey, man, come on, you can do it.
Right. They just don't
you
show
have
up.
rights.
Right.
These are your children. You haven't lost your rights. You need to get sober. You need to be honest. And, here are the resources. You can do it. And so a lot of the times, parents will finally, eventually just come to being sick and tired of being sick and tired and getting clean. But by that time, their children have been adopted out, which is really sad. I got very lucky, very blessed that my kids should have been adopted out. I filed a 388, and what that did was it bought me more time. And for the length of time that my children were in the system, it was a miracle that I was even able to get a second shot. But when I finally got sober in 2014, my DOC was meth and alcohol. When I finally got sober and surrendered, it was not with the intentions of me or the possibility of me ever getting my children back at all.
Right.
It was either I need to get sober or I'm going to die, because I was just worn out spiritually, physically, emotionally, tapped out, hungry, I just lost. I had to get on my knees and just surrender. I mean, it was it was a prayer that I prayed, and I'll never forget it. And it was like, okay, God, like, do whatever you need to do, or I'm done. Like, this is your shot to either carry me to the path that I need to do. I will do anything. I will go into treatment. I will do whatever you tell me to do, or take me home, because I cannot live in this torment anymore.
Right.
And so that was
such a pivotal moment.
Oh goodness, yeah. It was my rock bottom, and I've had many rock bottoms before that. You would have thought my children getting taken away would have been my rock bottom, but it was 3 years after that even.
Right.
So in 2014, October 13th is my recovery date. So I have 10 years coming up.
That's awesome.
In October 13th.
That's so
Yeah,
cool.
I know. From there, I went into a treatment center that was faith-based, had bed bugs. And I say this because it was like exactly what I needed.
Right.
Like, I needed that tough love.
Right.
I didn't need any like
pampered.
cushiony, nads and all that great stuff of all the clients get, or the places that I work at. I'm like, that's beautiful. But if you came to where I came from, like, you heard zaps when people would come in, because they'd have to throw everything in those big tents, and they'd come in from the streets. And even though, my place, the place that I ended up going to was for women, and they covered a multitude of things, from domestic violence to addiction to depression and everything that I was going through and that I needed. I showed up there with like one flip-flop and like no hair, because I had chopped all my hair off, like total like zombie tweaker looking chick.
They took you in.
They took me in, and they loved me, and for the first 45 days I got exactly what I needed. And that was to like feel like, to just be, and just to have no stress, and just to feel like a child almost. It's weird. It was like, it was like Godspeed healing, in the fact that like I never realized that, that little kid inside of me was what needed to heal. And when I did that, when I got out of that place, I just started to crave like recovery, meetings. DCFS gave me a second chance, and they said, okay, well, this is what you need to do. And so I did all of it. It was like a scroll of things to do. Like parenting classes, I did 2 of those. Like everything they did, I did extra.
Right.
Random testing, this and that. And I did my outpatient program, and it was like a 3 to 6 month program. I ended up staying a whole year. And so just because I craved it, like, and I was ready, so I was just like a sponge absorbing all of it. So, yeah. It was
That's
amazing.
so cool. So how long were you in that program, this treatment center?
The treatment center, the faith-based women's program, I was there for 45 days.
Okay. And then after that, you did the outpatient program?
Yes, I did that outpatient program through Pacific Clinics in Pasadena.
Okay, nice.
And Prototypes. It's a really great resource for anyone out there who says, I can't get sober because I don't have good insurance.
Right.
Like, you can call 211, or you can call Prototypes, or you can just get on Google. Like, there are places that will take you. If you want to get sober, like, God's going to open up the doors.
And a lot of times people ask us, and we have so many resources for them. So it's, we have a list of just different places and different options that people have. So if you really want to get sober, or if you really want to tackle your mental health disease and issues, whether it's us, I mean, we like to say that, call us, because we have all the resources.
Yeah.
Sometimes Google, there's, information, some good information, some bad information. But at the end of the day, there are resources available.
Exactly.
And like you said, you pointed out a few really good ones. It's just a matter of wanting to get help and being willing to do the work.
Like, are you ready? Are you actually ready? Like, are you just like, pipe talking and, whatever, talking out of your butt. Like, you're going to do it tomorrow, and then tomorrow turns into a week and turns into a month. And then before you know it.
Just take that first step.
Yeah, you got to just do it. You just have to jump in. You can't dip your feet in it. You just have to jump in.
Right.
And it's such a beautiful experience, because there is nothing that you can't do after you get sober. Like, that's the biggest dragon, like, you will ever slay. Like, the sky's the limit. And it just gets better and better after you get sober. I remember in recovery, early recovery, I was in the pink cloud. Okay. And so I totally, like, and a lot of people will say this, I hear this all of the time, like, I was afraid of my past so much so that, like, I would put, like, blocks up. Like I would disconnect myself from friends that I used with. I would, I deleted everyone on my Facebook.
Right.
I changed my number. I wouldn't walk down the alcohol aisle, even though I knew I was strong enough and I had the tools. But like, I remember there was this billboard on the 60 freeway where like this chick was like drinking, and I'm like, just don't look. Like it's coming up, man.
Right,
it's coming
like
up.
the other way.
Yeah, we're approaching it. Just don't look, because that's how little faith I had in myself, and how much I hated the life that I had lived and this newfound freedom that I had, that I never wanted to go back to that feeling of being hungry, tired, and just desperate for
So that
help.
was kind of the first phase, right? Where you're
First
like, I
phase.
want to completely remove myself from anything that has to do with drugs, alcohol.
Deny myself completely. I mean, I wouldn't even like give myself permission to listen to my favorite music. Like I was a little bit too hard.
You were worried that it was gonna
trigger
you.
Exactly.
Right?
I mean, that in a way, I think that I needed to be that way, because as an addict, I am all or nothing.
Right.
And I'm still all or nothing.
Right.
Like, because if I'm not doing what I'm doing right now, I'm going to be doing what I used to be doing.
Right.
And so, like, I have that mentality, and I've accepted it, and I embrace it, and I use it to, like, get the things that I need to get done, like my goals, my dreams.
But you're also a great example of somebody who followed that path and has been, continuing to have sustainable recovery. And so tell us a little bit about what do you do, what kind of action steps do you take, in order for you to stay sober?
So what's worked for me is consistency, discipline, letting my actions and my fruit speak. So like for myself, instead of like sitting here acting like I know what I'm talking about. Like, yes, I can do that, especially with clients. And like, I will always meet a client where they're at. And the number one thing that I think that makes me special, and makes a lot of us in the field special when we have a past, because everybody has a past and knows pain, is being able to empathize and put ourselves in their shoes in a genuine way, because they feel it. Like, especially in the beginning, like as an addict, I remember being super suspicious, like, of people. And, you come into recovery and you're like, that person's talking about me and that person doesn't like me and this and that.
It's all about you.
It's all about you, yeah. And so when you get somebody that genuinely cares, you can feel it. And so I use that. I think
that's huge.
Yeah. Like
I think that's one thing we notice a lot is people, especially when they come into, not as much with outpatient program, but with the residential inpatient programs, is that because, they might have had multiple failed attempts, or they might have been to different places. And so our programs, it's very love-based. It's very, family-based.
That's awesome.
And so, but a lot of times they come in, they're kind of jaded, right? And so they think that there's this lack of trust. Yeah. And then, so it takes a little bit of time to kind of show them that, no, this place is different. And, one shout out to South Coast Counseling. South Coast Counseling is a nonprofit. It's a 15-bed facility on Plummer Street in Costa Mesa. That's been around since 1968. I'm one of the chairmen of the program.
I'll add that to my resource list.
I'm gonna say that has some scholarships. It has insurance. It has, grants. It kind of has a different mixed variety of different ways for people to get help. Yeah. So that's been around for such a long time and has such a huge alumni base. And so that's a program that is, detox residential, inpatient, and has the ability to really provide that family environment. It's 15 clients in one kind of triplex type facility.
Intimate.
Yeah, it's really intimate, and it's something where almost like kind of a collegial kind of, that type of feel where you're all brothers and sisters and you're kind of working together.
Like summer camp.
Yeah. And it's, it's different than, to me, I think it goes back to that authenticness of, it's not this fancy place in Malibu or this fancy, kind of pampering type of thing. And I'm not putting those down. I mean, I believe in all different types of treatment. Yeah. And there is a place for luxury treatment. And, we do have some of those types of programs as well. Yeah. And I think that's the right fit for certain people that have certain expectations. But I think for people who might have not got it the first time around, and they've been trying a few times, and it's like, let's put away all that other stuff.
They need hardcore
and really
truth.
kind of get into the kind of that just roll up your sleeves mentality, Yeah. So that's, that's cool to know that that's kind of the type of environment where you were able to also succeed
Yeah.
is, I'm sure you've been used to nice things, but it was ultimately
I was
back then.
I mean, even if I had access to nice things, I was in such a mode of like self-punishment.
Just destruction.
Yeah, like that was my comfort zone, like being in dog crop. Like that's where I would have felt more comfortable than going to like Malibu, getting nads and back rubs, even though it would have been nice. What I needed was tough love. What I needed was, I needed to want it. I needed to fight for it. I needed to choose life, and I think a lot of people need that.
Right.
And even when we come from, a great background where we have resources and parents that love us and have given us everything, I think that even more so than we need that reality, that check, that tough love, and that that mirror, even so that we can like pull our head out of our what and do it.
And I think it's a combination of the tough love plus what you said earlier, which is that nurturing, loving environment, right? And it's like finding that balance between that, because just letting people do whatever they want, they're not going to get where they want to go, right? But then also being too hard on somebody and trying to make them tough, that doesn't work either.
No, they just rebel and then they're gone. And it's dangerous. I know we hear it a lot. And the fentanyl, it's really serious. It's in everything, marijuana, everything. I have twins. They're 16-year-old twin daughters who I don't believe are experimenting. I have them pretty sheltered, but I know that their friends have, and it can happen to anybody. So just like all it really takes, and this is from, just my memory from my experience in the treatment center that I went to, because I wanted it so bad, I was grateful to be there, and I was enthusiastic and happy. But I had a lot of counselors that were negative. And so now being able to be a substance abuse counselor, I take it and I'm very grateful. Like it's a privilege for me, because I get to be everything that I needed and then some. Like I don't forget how that feels,
Right. You've gone through the experience of being the client, and then now you kind of saw what works, what doesn't work.
Exactly.
And you can apply that in your with your clients.
Exactly. And I like to also, like, to what I said earlier about being like walking fruit and being like having my everything I'm doing, like my goals, my dreams, my education, like everything I've done, everything that I say, it matches in like my daily actions. Like I don't, like when I stopped doing drugs, I stopped smoking cigarettes. Like I didn't start vaping. I run 5 miles a day, 7 days a week. Like I juice celery, and I push that on like people that know me and love me. I don't push that on clients, of course, that's not ethical, but like I'll hint at it. Like, health and wellness is important, like health is wealth. And like, so like we sometimes, I believe, as all or nothing thinkers and coming from addiction, I think that it's okay. And my idea of the perfect harm reduction is replacing bad habits with like really good ones. Like being addicted to running, you can't go wrong with that. Like being addicted to eating healthy, you can't go wrong with that. Like drinking water instead of alcohol, like you just can't go wrong with that. And so like I'm really into that, and I push that, and I think that clients naturally can sense it, and they're like, oh well, wow, once they hear my story, they're like, or they see my before picture, they're like, oh wow, if she can do it, I can do it. That before and after is huge, right? Huge, yeah. I think it's interesting you said kind of just replacing bad habits with good habits, right? I think that's such a key element in that sustainable recovery, and also just whether you're dealing with addiction or even mental health disease and different types of issues. One thing that I think you were saying is that health and the fitness, and just eating right, exercising. And so I think, just what I would add to that is, everyone has to find their own balance. Like for you, maybe it's 5 miles. For somebody else, it's 1 mile. It's not about how much you're doing. It's just about doing it, right? It's about finding your purpose, finding what makes your endorphins go wild. Like what makes you happy. It could be playing with your dog. It could be karate. It could be running. Anything. It could be just as long as you're like moving your body, right? And I think that's the key is, getting out of your head, moving your body. That's the holistic path to, healing yourself. And I think that, anything, my advice would be, what worked for me was anything that I don't want to do that's going to step me out of my comfort zone, do it. Like,
Right.
just do it, because
That's what I do.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I remember going in my internship, them throwing me into like 20 women. Like, these women were Malibu women. Like, they were, I mean, lawyers, doctors. Here I am, like, shaking in my boots. I'm like in my internship, and they're like, oh, look at this girl. Like, what does she know about addiction? She's never suffered a day in her life.
Right.
And this was my very first group. And I remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, like, okay, I've trained for this. I've studied for this. Like, why am I so afraid? Just do it. Like, and I
Right.
just did it. And you know
Right.
what? Afterwards, the rush that I got was amazing. And I just, every time I'm afraid to do something, like whether it be, making amends or signing up for a 5K or going on a job interview, coming today even, like,
Right.
I do it because I know that it's growth, and I know that it's going to keep me even that much further away from who I used to be in addiction.
Yes. And I think, one kind of philosophy that I go by, which is very similar, is that I learned to be comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right. And it's that, because at first being uncomfortable is something we want to avoid.
Right.
Right. But then you can't necessarily progress if that's the approach.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like, no, it's okay to be uncomfortable. I'm still going to do this thing.
Yeah.
But where I kind of balance that out is I just kind of work my way into it. Right. So like, for example, eventually I want to run, 30 minutes, 45 minutes on the treadmill, whatever it is. Let's say that's the goal. Right.
Yeah.
I don't start with running just off the bat. Right. Because I've tried all those things before. Right. And then you get hurt.
I want to be more like you.
You know what I mean? Like, you're more into
like your balance.
you're more hardcore, but like I'm more like, because I've tried it. Like, let's just go lift a bunch of heavy weights. So let's just start running, and then you can do that in your 20s. Like if you're 20s, you can do that.
New Year's resolution.
Right. When you start getting in your 40s and you get a little bit older, it's like, okay, well, maybe I should start with a 3.5 mile per hour walk.
Right.
And then through a month later, now I can start running, and then now I can start sprinting.
Exactly.
But hey, 3-4 months later, now you're sprinting and you're doing like,
and it's consistency too.
Right.
Like
and
walking
you've built the
best.
momentum, right? So then you prevent injury. So for me, it's about whatever I do, it's about get started, right?
Yeah,
No
exactly.
excuse. And then be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then just work your way up, right?
Exactly.
And then don't think about don't let the goal get in the way of the process.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Because the process is like the most beautiful part of all of it. It's like that butterfly moment.
Right.
Like the whole cocooning, and then you get to fly after. You're like, I just conquered something, and I just attacked another goal, like another.
Right. And I think a lot of people are like, well, let's set goals, right? And then like, people set goals, and then they wonder why they don't achieve those goals.
Right.
Because I think people get so fixated on the actual goal.
Right. Yeah.
I want to lose weight. I want to do this. I want to become sober. And it's like the goal, like you have to have goals.
Yeah.
That's the first step. You set the goal, but then you can't like get fixated and get stuck on the goal.
Yeah.
And like, oh, just dream about the goal. It's not about dreaming. It's not about thinking. It's about doing. Right.
Those baby
and
steps.
Then take those steps. And I think, that's one of the things you were talking about earlier is, in the context of getting your kids back, if you would have just thought about, okay, well, the goal is to get my kids back, right?
Yeah.
But then if you were going to think about how hard that is, at first the depression and going further was because you weren't thinking about it
so
as far as like, hey, these are the steps I have to do.
It wasn't attainable. There was no light at the end of that tunnel. That ship sank in my mind.
Right. Yeah. But then later the switch, like you were the same person.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that got the kids back, right?
Yeah.
But the shift in your mental approach and in the way you kind of tackled those obstacles. So share a little bit about that. How did that mindset change, and then what did you start doing differently that led to you getting the things that you lost back?
Well, number one, surrender.
Mm-hmm.
Surrendering and just giving it all up. And the moment I surrendered was the moment like I was given like new eyes, and I saw everything differently. I no longer saw excuses like, if I get sober, like nobody's gonna forgive me, like it's not worth it, or life's gonna be so boring, or I'm gonna be super tired. And no, like I saw it for what it was. Like I saw addiction as disgusting, and I started to see little like glimmers of hope. Like I started to see a path laid out, and I started to see that my relationships, like whether that had been with my parents or with the social workers that I used to hate and think they were so against me because I was tweaking and drunk. Of course, everyone's against you when you're high. Yeah, it's everyone else's fault. I started to see that they were working with me and that they were actually taking me seriously because I was tackling those goals. Whether that had been like, a clean drug test, to not missing my visits that were monitored, to not missing my phone calls with my children, and finishing the parenting class, getting progress letters from outpatient, getting my completion letter when I left the women's treatment center, and just didn't even realize that I didn't have an actual folder, but I had like this little grocery bag of all of the things that I was doing, and I didn't realize how precious that bag was. Like, it was everything that I needed to do on that long list that I always called a scroll that DCFS wanted me to do to get my kids back, that seemed so far from me.
And you did it.
And I did it.
Yes.
And they freaking clapped for me in that courtroom when I got them back too.
That's so cool.
It was amazing.
I think one thing that you mentioned is like you first kind of hated them, right? Like in terms of,
I did.
They're the bad guys, they're the
Blamed
enemies.
them. Yeah.
They're taking my kids away.
I even tried to like sue them. I actually did. If you look it up, like it's horrible.
Google it, guys. No.
Yeah, Google it. No, but because they violated my civil rights. Right. But you know what? Like, in my sober mind now, I would have said, you know what? Like, I'm in the wrong. Right. But when you're in addiction, and addicts are very smart. I didn't realize I was smart. At the time, I didn't even have a GED. Right. How am I able to find a lawyer in a contingency and sue DCFS for taking my kids and violating my civil rights? Well, I did it. And then I ended up losing them anyways. And where did that money go? Right. On stupid stuff, that stupid, dumb tweaker decisions like scratchers and casinos and just dumb. It was gone in like a month. Like, what did that do?
And it didn't get you anything that you really needed or wanted.
It didn't. All it did was feed my whole mentality that it's everybody else, and the lie that most addicts, a lot of addicts, I as an addict told myself, was that it's everyone else that has a problem. They're jealous of me. They're wrong. They have me wrong. Like, they still, when I did get my children back, they still hadn't had a dirty test from me. Like, I denied being like a meth addict. I said it was alcohol. Right. And like, come on, like, that's so silly. Right. Like, now I'm like, yeah, like, hardcore. Like, I was a freaking meth addict.
And now you accept who you were.
I accept who I was, but for a while I didn't. And in early recovery, I tried so hard to run away from my true calling to be a substance abuse counselor that I wasted a whole year in respiratory therapy school because I thought, like, that's super professional. Right. Like, it's going to make my mom proud because she's a nurse. And like, there's no respiratory therapists that are ex-tweakers. Like, they'll never suspect me. I don't look like a tweaker anymore. Right.
Just kind of hide from
who I was. Yeah. Like, once the kids were back and, all the court cards were signed for DCFS and I did all my meetings and everything was done, I wanted that so far behind me. And I had it so wrong.
Just like, forget about it.
Yeah. And it was like, so I was a year into respiratory therapy school and I failed. And I was so down on myself, but it was the best thing that happened because it led me to go into the right field.
Yes.
Was being a substance abuse
And the rest
counselor.
is history.
Yeah.
So, no, that's such an interesting path that you took to becoming a counselor.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about kind of the different modalities you use in working with clients in terms of helping them kind of achieve the same types of outcomes that you have achieved. And also, if you work with families, like, what do you do with the families as well? So,
it's very special, and I want to say it's almost like magical what happens in the rooms when I get a client. Like, there are times when they'll send me a client that's just like scaring them, triggering them. This is other counselors, or just being just a bad client, a challenging client. They'll send them to me, and I just have a really good way with once I get past all of that, the pride and the ego and the fear and everything, especially when you get a client in the beginning and you're doing the assessment and they're not feeling too well. Of course, they're going to be grouchy, and of course, they're going to be mean, and they're going to, the transference. I'm not going to give it back to them. I'm really good at that. I've become like a master at not giving it back. Like, I'm not catching that ball and throwing it back, dude. Like, I know exactly how you're feeling. So I just of course I meet them where they're at, and you know, I just pour out just me, and I'm super authentic and genuine and loving. Like, I've had other counselors tell me, like, you can't do that. Like, you're going out of your way to do this and that for this person. You're spending too much time. You're only supposed to spend 1 hour a week with this person. You need to do less. Less is more. Like, everyone has their own style, but like, it's just every client that I get, I just can like hone in on like what I believe they need to be empowered on. Like, I don't want to say like I'm a cheerleader for them, but I kind of am. And sometimes that's what they need. People just need one person that can see them and you know, hear them and actually like treat them like a human being.
Yes.
And then they can do anything.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think it's that connection that you build with them, and build that environment in which they feel that you are genuinely there to support them and help them.
Yeah.
Right? Because then they'll open up to you.
Oh, yeah.
And once they open up to you, then there's a lot of positive work that you can do. I think it's that initial resistance.
It's breaking that ice
right?
down, yeah.
And I think that's such a tool and skill that not a lot of people have. And I think people who are in this industry, who are case managers and who, you know, are therapists and who work with clients, whether it's in groups or individuals, it's that inertia of kind of breaking through that glass and breaking through that kind of ceiling of resistance.
Yes.
And then once that happens, then it becomes challenging. Like, I think the clients, it's just such raw things that are going on inside that they want to, they've kind of, you know, buried it inside. And then they just don't know who to trust. So I think, you know, like, your vibe is so genuine, you know, and I almost feel like this childlike vibe.
I get that all the time.
You know what I mean? And it's a positive thing, because it's ultimately, it's that inner child that like lives within all of us that, you know, we want to free, and it becomes jaded and that, like, all the BS that we have to deal with in life, right? But that's the most beautiful part of ourselves.
Oh yeah. And
you know?
in any kind of position in the field of addiction, I feel like it's so important to have that childlike creativity, that childlike outlook and approach with clients, because it creates a safe space, and it creates like look, the only thing that separates me and my clients is time. For the women that I get that are going through similar situations that I went through, of course, I'm not going to make it about me. And, you know, we're trained and we're taught to not, you know, less is more, not to share. But I will, like, case by case, if I feel like it's going to empower somebody or help them out, like, yes, I will help them and sit with them on a Zoom to see their children. Or I will tell them about my story and the things that I did that, you know, help me get my kids out of the system.
To build that rapport.
And of course, I'm not going to go blowing like dragon smoke up their butt and saying like, hey, like, let me just sprinkle this fairy dust on you and you can do it all like in a day.
Set expectations for sure. You know?
But you definitely, it's hard work, but like, yes, you can do it. Like, I'm proof you can do it. Like, and it was amazing too, because you know, all 4 of my daughters were in the system for a very long time, and they went through a lot of trauma in the system. They were with, not with family, they were with a foster mother, and when I got them back, it wasn't just like everything was great. No, I had to go, I had the twins were younger, but I had teenagers that hated me, and I had to deal with that. And
they felt like you abandoned them.
Oh, right? Yeah. And it was like, I hate you. And I was challenged like worse than any client could ever challenge me. I went through years of just with my actions showing how sorry I am. And eventually my daughters, Journey and Sierra, and I, all 3 of us got to work together. And then they got to see me helping other women. And then that's when they really forgave, because they themselves were helping other women that were going through the same thing that their mama went through. So they got to say like, wow, this is how my mom was while we were in the system, like throwing up sick, like The Exorcist. Just going through it.
Just getting a little bit of a perspective of what you had to go through. And for you to get a perspective of what they had to go through.
That part, you know what I mean? Was very, just watching them even on the podcast. Because, you know, when you get your children back, you got a discovery and you get to read like everything highlighted and everything that the children said. And that's very hard. And I think that if anyone is strong enough to do it, I think they ought to do it, because it's good to know what was happening in your kids' minds, because they don't have that, that numbing like we have. Like, I don't remember, like a lot of people say, I don't remember any of it, but my kids do, because kids are smart and they're sponge-like. And
it's even like with, a lot of times we talk to clients or families when they dealt with an overdose.
Yeah.
And this is what, like, if they've survived the overdose, is the person that went through it, they don't even remember. Like,
they're like, well,
people always ask, like, why would they do it again? It's like, because they just like fell asleep and woke up.
Exactly.
But it's everyone around who was freaking out because that
trauma.
person could have died.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what do you mean you're like, but it's totally different perspectives of the same event.
Exactly. And it's almost like, gosh, like if you could put a little bit of that feeling in like a pill and have them swallow it.
Right. Then
maybe they might wake up and say, like,
well, it would be a bigger deterrence. Because a lot of people think that is like ODing itself is a deterrence, but it's not, because they don't actually remember.
It's like having surgery. Right. You just wake up and lose time. Right. Yeah. And that's so traumatic for like a mother to find their child. Like,
it's horrible.
Yeah. We just as a family, we've lost 3 people. I've lost 3 cousins in the last 3 years. Wow. One just celebrated. We didn't celebrate, but it's been a year since he passed away. Mm-hmm. He took his life. And then 2 of my other cousins died from fentanyl overdoses, and fentanyl wasn't even their drug of choice.
Wow. It was just in something that they took, right?
So like with all of that, and like I got out of the the street life and my addiction before fentanyl took off, because now it's in meth. So it wasn't my drug of choice. Heroin wasn't my drug of choice. And I never used needles. There's no saying that if I had been an addict now, that fentanyl probably would have been my drug of choice, because it would have crept its way into my meth, and I probably would have been just like everyone else who's struggling with fentanyl, because that's why I believe a lot of
that's
people...
That's what's happening these days. I mean, that wasn't even 10 years ago you weren't seeing that. This is a more recent phenomenon.
It's like 4 years.
Right.
5 years.
Right. And that's why the death rate's gone up so high, is because it's so fatal, and then it creeps itself into all these other drugs. Yeah. And then people just, a lot of times unknowingly take it, and then they die, or they become addicted to it because it is in the other drugs.
Like laced, exactly. And they're like, why do I feel sick and not awake? And I just did cocaine or meth. And I'm like, okay, well, let me tell you why. Let me tell you why you're freaking kicking so hard and you're feeling like crap, because it probably tested positive for fentanyl, because everything is fentanyl now. Right. It's really scary. And so I use all of that life experience, and I know that I'm not alone. I think that you can talk to anybody who's not even in the field of addiction or struggles with addiction, and they know someone that knows someone who's lost a loved one to addiction or overdose. Yes.
I mean, it's part of society now. Yeah. It's not something that's just in the shadows.
Yeah.
And we hear about it in the news. I think people are actually experiencing it they either know somebody either very directly or within their circle, right? And so that's on one hand, it's horrible, but on the other hand, it's an opportunity for us to kind of continue to raise awareness, education, and provide opportunities for people to have these types of programs where they can get the tools that they need and the support that they need to not have to deal with all that. And everyone's different, right? Some people might need to take certain medications. Some people can do it the all or nothing approach. Yeah. I think that's the part of our industry that has been evolving and needs to continue to evolve, is to understand that there is no one size fits all approach. And that you try different things with different people and ultimately find, the right,
your
kind
rhythm.
Of, right rhythm and kind
groove.
Of the right exact
the right
like,
fit
for that person. Yeah.
I totally agree. The way that I might counsel or love on somebody who struggles with alcohol is going to be totally different than somebody who comes in who's like 24 years old, who's coming off of fentanyl. Right. Because it's critical. I know that alcohol is very critical and crucial, but there's different things that we can do. Like we can get them, detox, and then we can talk to a doctor and try it before they discharge, to talk to them about Vivitrol. Like that's amazing. But with the fentanyl, it's like, it's more like critical. Right. It's like
it's 80% urgency.
It's more than 80% chance that if they ACA or if they leave, that they're gonna die.
Right.
So it's like I always approach them very cautiously, my clients who come in when it's fentanyl, and with a lot of love.
Yes.
A lot of love and a lot of care, because they're
They're
just
being
like
drawn.
wounded lambs.
They're being drawn to it, and it's like
Yeah.
you need to block them from.
Exactly.
Because most people, if you don't know, a lot of people come to treatment, they want to leave
All the time.
Because after a few days or after they go through some detox, it's like their brain is still kind of enmeshed and like saturated with these drugs.
Yes.
Right, and so you gotta prevent them, and these are all voluntary programs, so it's not like you can handcuff them to their bed, right?
Oh,
so
yeah.
like it's a lot of effort to convince somebody to continue to stay and for them to want to stay.
Yeah.
And it takes a village almost.
It does, man. I've shed tears, and they weren't fake tears.
Right.
I mean, I've done that too.
Yeah.
But I'll do
Whatever it
anything to
takes.
keep whatever
Whatever
it
it
takes,
takes.
man. I'll save a life.
Yeah.
Let's all get together and tell this person, like, one by one, all of us, how great they are. Just
Right.
anything to make them stay.
That team intervention.
Team intervention.
Really works because it also shows them like, wow, all these people care.
Exactly.
That's huge.
Because out there on the streets, like, you become invisible. I remember being invisible. I know what it's like to be invisible. And so, like, it's the saddest thing. And it's not just when I see, like, a young female, because I think of all the ways that they're getting taken advantage of and being trafficked and, just all the horrible things that are happening to them. But it's happening to our young boys, too, our young men.
Right.
It's horrible.
It's
like,
awful.
nobody is safe, and there's no... there's no self-love, so there's no boundaries at all. So it's just like the sky's the limit, and like, if they pass out,
Right.
what's
Who
happening?
knows what's going to happen?
And that's somebody's child.
Yes.
That could be my child.
Could be anybody. I mean,
That could have been me.
Could have been you. And I think it's just so much worse now because of it.
It is.
I think the key though is if people are watching or if they're listening and they have questions.
Yeah.
There are all these resources available, and we're happy. If we can help, we help. If not, we have resources that we give people. There is an opportunity to seek help, and there are people who are genuinely like yourself, just deeply enmeshed in helping other people get sober or deal with their mental health issues, their co-occurring issues, whether it's depression or anxiety, and just there's so many things happening at once.
Oh, yeah.
You don't really see clients that are just one thing anymore. Like, this
Never.
person's just an alcoholic or
They're
just a drug
onion
addict.
in a tree.
Right? It's like people
The
have
layers.
all kinds of disorders
Yeah.
combined and kind of enmeshed. And it's just about like peeling that onion and working on one thing at a time. Like, first you deal with them, detox, and then you remove the substance, and then you work on kind of the withdrawal, and then you give them some tools and programming. But then now all of a sudden the mental health components, or sometimes it's eating disorder, that starts creeping up. And then now you have to shift focus, and either you can help, depending on the severity, you can help them yourself within your program, or you refer them to other programs. And that's why I think a lot of people don't realize is, a lot of these programs, they're really good programs, work with other really good programs, because sometimes you can't do everything for that client.
Yeah, you got to wrap around them.
Right. And so, but it's just forming an allegiance, an alliance, and kind of this team of centers and people who really love and care about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that you come and approach this job as not really a job, but as a calling.
Oh yeah.
And
Definitely.
you can tell that that's like your passion and your purpose.
Like I'm like, my Instagram's like a little baby magnet for
What's
people
your
that need
Instagram
help.
handle for everyone?
It's Authentic Audra, and it hasn't been up for long, but I'm like, hey, I'm talking to myself.
That's me.
It's Authentic Audra, and my name is Audra Nicole Korosmer, but my handle is Authentic Audra. So
yes, and I think you have a lot of good messages on your
I try to keep it positive, and sometimes I'm like, dude, I'm such a freaking nerd.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm turning my Instagram into old school MySpace with all my freaking songs, but
That's
it's all about the message.
Just be yourself.
Just be myself. Exactly.
Well, Audra, I loved having you on the show.
Yes.
I really learned a lot. I think everyone watching learned a lot. And really, if you're dealing with some of the issues that Audra dealt with, whether you're the parent dealing with the issues, or if you're if you're the kids or the children dealing with the issues and you don't know how to talk to your mom, or you kind of want to reconnect, Audra's available. You can reach out to us. We'll connect you with her.
Definitely.
Or you can reach out to her directly. So, I really think that you have such a interesting and unique perspective of the path to recovery.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of families and people dealing with the similar issues that you're dealing with that don't know how to navigate that. And so I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience and your knowledge with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you.